Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Attorney General William Barr gave us a preview of his congressional testimony next month about why he changed the sentencing recommendation for Donald Trump's friend, longtime friend, and campaign associate Roger Stone, who was convicted of multiple crimes concerning his involvement with the Trump presidential campaign. In an interview with ABC, the Attorney General explained that the prosecutor, who he recently put in charge of supervising the prosecution of Roger Stone, discussed the sentencing with the Attorney General on Monday.
On Monday, he came by to briefly chat with me and say that the team very much wanted to recommend the 7 to 9 year to the judge, but he thought that there was a way of satisfying everybody and providing more flexibility, and there was a brief discussion of that. I was under the impression that what was going to happen was very much what I had suggested, which is deferring to the judge and then pointing out various factors and circumstances. On Monday night, when I first saw the news reports, I said, gee, the news is spinning this. This is not what we were going to do.
So you were surprised?
I was very surprised.
So the Attorney General wants you to believe that he was surprised, very surprised, that the prosecutors in the case filed a recommendation of a 7 to 9 year sentence. The Attorney General wants you to believe that he told the prosecutors supervising the team on the case to not do that. Don't do that. But the prosecutor then allowed that to happen anyway. That is a story of everyone working under the Attorney General, defying the Attorney General's order earlier in the day about how to handle the sentencing recommendation. Members of the House Judiciary Committee are going to have a very hard time believing that when they question William Barr much more closely on those points that he just glided through. As the rest of William Barr's story unfolds in the ABC interview, you can see why it's very, very important that he insists that somehow the prosecutors working on the case just defied him and then surprised him by doing their original recommendation of 7 to 9 years in their sentencing recommendation.
And once I confirmed that that's actually what we filed, I said that night to my staff that we had to get ready because we had to do something in the morning to amend that and clarify what our position was.
So William Barr's story is that he decided to request a lower sentence before the President of the United States, in the middle of the night, tweeted that what was basically an order from the President to the Attorney General to ask for a lower sentence.
And once the tweet occurred, the question is, well, now what do I do? And do you go forward with what you think is the right decision, or do you pull back because of the tweet?
You following this? William Barr's story now is that he was going to do it anyway, recommend a lower sentence, before the President told him to do it on Twitter, That led to William Barr having to say that Donald Trump's tweets are making it kind of difficult. In fact, he used the word impossible. Donald Trump's tweets are making it impossible for him to do his job.
Public statements and tweets made about the department, about our people in the department, our men and women here, about cases pending in the department, and about judges before whom we have cases, make it impossible for me to do my job and to assure the courts and the prosecutors in the department that we're doing our work with integrity.
William Barr is right that it is impossible to honestly do the job of Attorney General the way it's supposed to be done if you are appointed to that job by Donald Trump. He's also correct that no one should think that, as he put it, he is doing his job with integrity. He said Donald Trump has undermined that we shouldn't even think that he's doing his job with integrity because Donald Trump's made it impossible for us to think that. And no one should believe William Barr when he explained in that interview with ABC when it is right and when it is wrong for the president to tell the Attorney General what to do. William Barr said that it's, quote, perfectly appropriate for the president to tell him to concentrate more law enforcement resources on, say, terrorism. But then William Barr gave an example of what he would not do, what he would never do, even if the president told him to do it.
If he were to say, go investigate somebody because, and you sense it's because they're a political opponent, then an Attorney General shouldn't carry that out, wouldn't carry that out.
William Barr has indeed carried that out. William Barr flew to Europe, making multiple stops, investigating Joe Biden himself and Joe Biden's son because the president wanted him to. William Barr assigned a U.S. attorney the extra duty of investigating Joe Biden and Joe Biden's son and Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party because Donald Trump wanted him to do that. William Barr just said that he wouldn't do an investigation like that if, quote, you sense it's because they're a political opponent. You didn't have to sense that Joe Biden was a political opponent of Donald Trump's. He was a declared candidate for president of the United States. William Barr is going to be challenged with his own words, these words that you've heard from him tonight. He's going to be challenged with those words when he testifies to the House Judiciary Committee about this next month. William Barr has a lot of work to do on his answers to the questions that he will be facing, including the question: if Donald Trump has made it impossible for you to do your job, why haven't you resigned like federal prosecutor Jonathan Kravis, who had the dignity and the sense of duty to resign when you, William Barr, made it impossible for him to do his job? When Attorney General William Barr changed the sentencing recommendation in the Roger Stone case, all four prosecutors working on the case withdrew from the case immediately, and one of them, Jonathan Kravis, resigned from his job at the Justice Department because William Barr made it impossible for him to do his job. Jonathan Kravis will take his place in the history of this period as a person of principle, a person who lived his oath as a member of the bar, and a person who lived his oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. That is not what history will write about William Barr.
It is Friday, the 14th of February of 2020. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, you lovebirds out there, is Valentine's Day, and the greatest cocktail in the world to drink with a friend, a very intimate friend, by the way, is the French 77. Not only is it the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktailing, it is one that you definitely don't want to drink alone. You need a friend. And why not have an intimate friend? Because you're going to be falling over. Yeah, if you're going to fall over, you want to be intimate. Because you'll be laying there for a while, motionless, if you drink too much. Just giving you a fair warning. All right. Old people don't become wise because they are inexperienced, okay? They become wise because they survived it. Indeed. Well, speaking of surviving, the great experiment has been going on for over a couple of 100 years now, and I don't know, is that rattling that I hear in the lungs? Is that are we in a death throw right now? I sure hope not. But boy, these patriots of conservatives, you would think they were working for a hostile foreign power, and have been for 70 some odd years or more. Yikes. Well, they have succeeded in pretty much strangling Lady Liberty, or as Trump would say, moved on her like a bee. And when you're a Russian asset in the Oval Office, Moscow Mitch and Bill Barr just let you do it. That's where we are, folks. Bill Barr is out there playing kabuki. Trump is such an idiot, he doesn't get it. I mean, the tell is always the tell, okay? Now, last night, the White House, not Donald Trump, the White House put out a notice that Donald Trump is okay with what Bill Barr said. And today, Trump is out there going, I don't care what Bill Barr said. I'm bragging about destroying America and handing it over to Vlad. There's not a damn thing you can do about it. And he is. And pretty soon, well, Dobbs went after Barr last night, and to me, that was sort of a tell. Because Dobbs doesn't do anything out of a vacuum. He has some marching orders from somebody. And if it's not directly from you-know-who, it's getting communicated through an intermediary somehow. And Dobbs went after Barr last night, and pretty much he became the new Mitt Romney. Now, we'll see if, Fox and the rest of them change that tune around, because we know that Barr was committing kabuki. Because why has he not been concerned about all the other cases that he's involved himself with from the day that he was confirmed as AG? He is mad, obviously, because Trump is bragging about it. Trump is like that mafia don that all the other mafia dons hate because Donald Trump is a loudmouth. And in the code of ethics of those mobsters, they like to do things a little on the low-low. Okay? Trump is like the Dapper Don, out there bragging this and bragging that, and that's what brought down the Dapper Don. Sonny Bull would not have turned state's evidence if, think about it, a soldier, Sonny the Bull Gravano, out there going, it's sort of like in the Nuremberg trials where they said if you're following orders, it's no excuse. Well, this guy, I got to tell you, he is out of the norm. He just blabs about everything. It's exactly what Gotti did. Blab, 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 blab. There was another mafia don, and I'm so sorry I forget his name, but he's the one that started the don't discriminate against Italian Americans by calling them mobsters. The mafia. The mafia was considered to be a term of hate, a hate crime. And, Italian American civil rights. Well, on the surface of that, it's not correct to color a whole population by the behaviors of a craven few. We understand that. But the guy was a mobster. He was a mob don. And he breached that code. You don't get in front of the cameras. You don't draw attention to us. We're doing this on the low. Come on. And they offed him. Had a speech in front of a bunch of people at an Italian-American Heritage Day parade. Kaboom. Trump is a loudmouth. And I'm not talking about the mobsters here. I'm talking about Vlad. Okay, let's be clear. Which reminds me, we lifted sanctions on Deripaska again right at the point that I guess now they're rogue members of the Justice Department continuing this Russia investigation, because the real DOJ is investigating the investigators who discovered that Russia's been trying pretty much to take us over, and pretty much succeeded because they got a guy in the Oval Office right now turning state secrets to Lavrov and Kislyak. So we better investigate the people who discovered that. Jesus. Yeah, okay. It looks like Vlad directly has been having money laundered by Deripaska. Well, that's direct in a sense. But actual Vladian money being laundered in the United States kind of makes you wonder. Now, you know Moscow Mitch is involved with Deripaska because Deripaska bought Moscow Mitch off in Kentucky. Bought the whole state off. So that's one way to launder some rubles. But I have a feeling it's Trump condos and other overpriced pieces of property. So now we have a direct connection of Vladian money being laundered in the United States, and Bill Barr is quashing that investigation. Makes you wonder why. Doesn't sound to me like he's at odds with Donald Trump. Though Trump's such an idiot, he's out there pretty much attacking Barr. You know, Barr's saying, look, you know, if you just be quiet a little bit, I can get this stuff done, and you'll be happy. Just trust me. Donald Trump doesn't trust anybody. And he's such a dimwit. And the other mob dons in the world are getting a little perturbed, I'm telling you. I told you from the very beginning, Trump becoming president of the United States is what saved his life. For a while, Vlad drew a line in the sand. Vlad made him an offer he couldn't refuse. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Valentine's Day, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Boy, wow, when the stars align, they really align. Well, of course, at the top, that was Lawrence breaking down the confusing and conflicting account of the Roger Stone case. And looks like Bill Barr will have a hard time explaining himself to Congress on March 31st if he shows up. What's up with that? Tell that guy he's going to stand before, is it the judiciary? Or is it Intel? I can't remember. I think it's judiciary, Nadler's. He has to stand in front of Nadler's committee next week. What is this 31 March BS? So he can spin everything until then like he did with the Mueller report? On the rest of the menu, in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Native Americans defeated the GOP's racist voter ID law in North Dakota. Yeah, North Dakota said, oh, you have to have a street address. Well, on the reservations, they don't really have streets. Well, now, the state of North Dakota has to give them house numbers so they can vote. While bragging about a booming economy, Trump cut federal pay raises because of, quote, a national emergency or serious economic conditions affecting the general welfare. Oh, what could those conditions be? And the Senate defied Moscow Mitch McConnell and voted to curb Trump's war powers. Defied him. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where over 800,000 Syrian women and children have fled their homes during a Russian-backed military campaign to clear out the Syrian opposition. And commemorating the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Dresden, German President Steinmeier warned of the poison of racism and antisemitism. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com to the right of the page. Of course, as you know, if you've been listening, and if you haven't, if this is your first foray into West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, well, I'll tell you, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com to the right of the page is the chat room link, and Kelly Lincoln monitors that for us, and we thank you, Kelly. Thank you. to the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You will then notice, hopefully, our link to our Patreon page. Do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. We're a little powerhouse of resistance and have been for over 8 years, going on 9 years, only because of you. You are our biggest contributor. Now, honestly, the bulk of how we keep this powerhouse powered comes out of our own wallets. But really, we could not pay our bills and collect funds so that we can get newish machinery about every 4 years now, it looks like. And because of you. Thank you for your generosity. And we are forever thankful from the deepest parts of our heart. And that is the loving truth on Valentine's Day. It is sincere, okay? I'm kind of being jocular, but in all seriousness, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, just do so by going to @NetrootsRadio. How simple is that? Well, it's simple because, I got to tell you, Tom takes care of that, and he makes it so simple. Thank you, Tom. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, it's so simple. Just go to @JusticePutnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media for people's, social media linkage pleasure. Follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. I bet there is a podcasting posting service named etc. I bet there is. Okay, I'm not going to take the time to look. All right. I just came up, and I'll figure it out later, don't we all? Let's take a look at this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I've been ranting so long, it used to be that I had a true break during regular radio break periods, and now my rantings and sermonizing have been going so long that the breaks have been pushed back. So maybe we'll try to have some sort of order here, but it is a salon, and it takes as long as it takes. Dan Desai Martin of the American Independent brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. North Dakota was forced this week to allow Native American tribal IDs as acceptable identification at the voting booth, the Campaign Legal Center announced yesterday, Thursday. The decision is a culmination of a 4-year legal battle that began in January of 2016 in response to the state's stringent voter ID law. It has always been our goal to ensure that every Native person in North Dakota has an equal opportunity to vote, and we have achieved that today, Matthew Campbell, attorney for the Native American Rights Fund, said in a press release. We thank the Spirit Lake Nation, Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, and the individual Native voters that stood up for the right to vote. The Native American Rights Fund, along with the Campaign Legal Center, were plaintiffs in lawsuits targeting the ID law under the GOP-backed law. Oh, also, just remember, North Dakota has a unicameral house, not a bicameral. Just remember that. North Dakota residents under this GOP-backed law were forced to present identification with a street address in order to vote. However, many Native Americans in the state live on reservations that do not have residential addresses, thereby disenfranchising them from the ability to vote. They send these kids through the Federalist Society. They get recruited quite young. And then they sit around and they try to find out all these little ways to worm their way in using protocol and process to destroy the great experiment. And they call themselves patriots? No. They are loyalists to another power, not really a heart-connected connection to the great experiment. Please. The restrictive voter ID law put North Dakota beyond the norms of voter ID laws and violates the constitutional rights of the state's citizens, the Native Americans Rights Fund wrote on its website. Just like North Dakota's previous law, which was found unconstitutional by a federal court, this law makes it harder for some citizens, specifically Native American citizens, to exercise their right to vote. Now, yesterday, Thursday, the North Dakota Secretary of State agreed to enter a legally binding consent decree allowing tribal IDs as an acceptable form of voter ID. Further, according to the Campaign Legal Center, the state will work to distribute free non-driver IDs on every reservation in the state within 30 days of an election. Oh, you mean government has to work when it's being run by people who don't want it to work? We'll see how that works. North Dakota is moving in the right direction to remove unfair barriers to the ballot box. Representative Terry Sewell, Democrat, of Alabama, a staunch voting rights advocate, said in an email. Sewell noted the lawsuits were slow and costly, calling on the U.S. Senate to pass H.R. 4 so that these kinds of voter suppression tactics are stopped before they can go into effect and sway an election. H.R. 4, the Voting Rights Advancement Act, would strengthen the Voting Rights Act and protect citizens across the country from unfair suppression efforts. The bill passed the House by a 228 to 187 vote in December. I wonder who the 187 were. What party and affiliation would they be from? The mind reels trying to figure that one out now, doesn't it? Voting rights advocates and Democratic organizations have been ramping up efforts to fight various Republican-backed voter suppression laws across the country in recent years, and the push appears to be paying off. In November, a judge ordered the state of Florida to stop rigging the ballot by listing Republican candidates first, a tactic that increases support for those candidates by up to 5%. In January, the Missouri Supreme Court overturned a key part of a Republican-backed voter suppression law that required residents to have a photo ID or another form of ID like a bank statement to cast a ballot. The measure forced those without a photo ID to sign a form acknowledging they did not have one. The court called the law misleading and contradictory. Also in January, a federal court blocked a Republican-backed voter suppression law in Arizona, in part because it has a discriminatory impact on Native American, Hispanic, and African American voters. Well, I'm sure the GOP would say, yeah, what the hell do you think we've been trying to do all this time? Democrats scored a victory in South Carolina the same month, eliminating the requirement that voters provide their full 9-digit Social Security number in order to register to vote. And, of course, we all know your Social Security is not supposed to be used as a form of ID. So why is it that Big Brother Republicans who don't want big government unless they're running Big Brother, why would they want your Social Security number? To intimidate you, to keep you from voting. Well, it looks that for now, the right to vote is being protected by the judiciary. Looks like Dan DeSai Martin again brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The White House informed Congress on Monday that Trump would use his authority to scale back pay raises for federal workers next year from 2.5% to just 1%. is the cruelty, Officials cited Trump's authority to do so in cases of national emergency or serious economic conditions affecting the general welfare. But he's been bragging about how great the stock market is, as if the stock market is the gauge in which all of the economy encompasses everyone's gains or losses. We must maintain efforts to put our nation on a fiscally sustainable course. Federal agency budgets cannot sustain such increases, the White House wrote. For 2021, the across-the-board base pay increase will be limited to 1.0%, and locality pay percentages will remain at their 2020 levels. This alternative pay plan decision will not materially affect our ability to attract and retain a well-qualified federal workforce because everybody's going to be acting anyway. We're paying them. We put out ads on Craigslist, and we get actors all the time. So we have acting secretaries, we have acting subsecretaries, we even have acting civil servants. I added that big part there. In this reporter's opinion, we're allowed to do that here in the salon at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, just for your knowledge and information. Now, of course, that letter stands in stark contrast with Trump's repeated boasts about the U.S. economy. Best U.S. economy in history, Trump tweeted on Tuesday, one day after the White House letter was sent to Congress. On Sunday, Trump retweeted a post from his campaign that claimed the economy is booming. Yeah, it's being blown up into smithereens. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment about the contradiction because I think they were still a little busy with Barr, in this reporter's opinion. The group estimates, and that group would be the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget Estimates, that Trump administration has added trillions to the national debt, due in no small part to the 2017 GOP tax bill. That law alone will add billions to the deficit, with most of the changes designed to benefit corporations and the wealthiest Americans. Oh, those are the only people that count, my friend. The group estimates the tax law, combined with other legislation Trump has signed since taking office, will likely send the national debt soaring above $4.1 trillion. So let's take it. We'll pay it back with Medicaid and Social Security monies. We'll do that. We won't take any money away from the wall because we're taking money away from the military to protect us from hostile foreign takeovers so that Trump can build a wall that won't stop anyone, but it looks good to him. Jeez, this guy's design sense is the worst. Federal workers have been hit before under Trump. Of course, we remember in late 2018 and early 2019, he instigated a 35-day partial government shutdown, which prevented hundreds of thousands of federal workers from getting paid just before the holiday season. Merry Savage Christmas. During the shutdown, 1 in 4 federal workers had to turn to food banks in order to feed themselves and their families. More than 1 in 4 missed a mortgage or rent payment, and 42% were forced to take on additional debt to endure the shutdown. Well, it sounds like a giveaway to the payday lenders to me and the banks for being able to foreclose on people's houses. Everybody wins when you're a corporation. Everybody loses when you're not. One top Trump advisor dismissed those issues at the time, saying federal workers may have been better off because of the shutdown. A huge share of government workers were going to take vacation days, say, between Christmas and New Year's, and then we have a shutdown, and so they can't go to work. So then they have the vacation, but they don't have to use their vacation days. That was Kevin Haslett, chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors. By contrast, while federal workers were furloughed, Trump spent $50,000 of his own money on a digital golf toy installed in the White House. The economy is booming for the people that count. Josh Israel of the American Independent brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Now leave some room. We still have the chef's table to attend to after the break. Some 55 senators voted yesterday, Thursday, to limit the Trump administration's ability to carry out military attacks on Iran without congressional authorization. Well, wait till he finds out about this. Despite fierce opposition from Trump himself and Senate Majority Leader Moscow Mitch McConnell, 8 Senate Republicans joined with all 47 members of the Senate Democratic Caucus to pass the measure. Trump declined to alert Democratic lawmakers before ordering a strike on Soleimani, the brutal leader of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, back in January. Soleimani was killed in that attack, like we didn't know. He did inform some Republican lawmakers, notably South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, the bootlicker, who said he was briefed on the planned airstrike while visiting Trump at his Florida golf resort. Golf? A resort? Trump later claimed, without evidence, that he had kept the information from Democratic leaders because they could not be trusted with sensitive national security secrets. Well, that's what all autocrats say who don't know shit about American civics. Trump and his administration subsequently received bipartisan criticism for their attempts to retroactively justify the strike as urgent, spurred by an alleged imminent threat, proof of which never materialized. Oh, yeah. Remember those WMDs they never found? We're still looking. Iran retaliated days after the strike on Soleimani by firing ballistic missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, yeah, you got to get that one right, called the move a slap, intended to encourage the withdrawal of American troops from the region. Now, and at least 100 American service members suffered brain injuries as a result of those retaliatory strikes. And Trump initially bragged, all is well, and wrongly stated that no Americans had been harmed, later dismissing reports of their injuries as headaches that were not very serious. And you know what? He doubled down on that yesterday late. He doesn't believe they're hurt. You know, he wants to be General Patton and go in there and smack them around because they're cowards. Like this guy could ever have been able to, jump in a foxhole and protect his fellows. Hey, Trump is Corporal Ofen. Give me a break. On January 9th, the House voted 224 to 194, mostly along party lines, to direct Trump to terminate the use of United States armed forces to engage in hostilities in and against Iran. McConnell said on Tuesday in a floor speech that he strongly opposed the blunt and clumsy resolution. To the graveyard it goes. It is unclear whether the resolutions will be binding without Trump's assent. That question has not yet been resolved by the federal court system constitutionally. Only Congress has the power to declare war. But under the 1973 War Powers Resolution, the president has some leeway to unilaterally act in emergencies, but must get authorization from Congress for longer military efforts. The rule also requires that the president, in every possible instance, shall consult with Congress before introducing United States armed forces into hostilities. Well, Trump figures, I told Lindsey, that's good enough. Well, Donnie, it's not. This is America. Welcome to the party, pal. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Art in the House. If the world needed a feature-length retelling of Hansel and Gretel, the flipped-around title Gretel and Hansel does provide an interesting and creative new take. In this retelling, the older sibling is Gretel, played by Sophia Lillis, who you might remember from It. The story starts to diverge from the traditional after the kids set off through the woods, where they're saved by a hunter, who we never see again, and then ingest some psychedelic mushrooms, inducing hallucinations that are somewhat predictive of where things are going. The woods aren't scary in an immersive, verdant way, but are stark and post-apocalyptic, much like the deconstructionist, triangular, and wildly out-of-place abode onto which the children eventually stumble. There's no gingerbread here, but inside there is a witch, Hulda, played by horror veteran Alice Cringe, and an endless smorgasbord of spookily mysterious sourcing. The meat, so to speak, of the movie happens inside the house, which is an unfolding tale encompassing universal themes of temptation and empowerment, especially female empowerment. Gretel is confused by what Hulda is encouraging her to embrace about herself, especially as its costs, particularly regarding her brother, become apparent. Not enough can be said about the production design and cinematography here. The movie's mostly shot 4:3 a la The Lighthouse, except for a few selected scenes. The project is the third directorial outing for Oz Perkins, son of Anthony, with acclaim from two smaller pictures in 2015 and 16. Gretel and Hansel is from a subgenre best described as cerebral horror. Its power is brooding and atmospheric, its message subtle and persistent, but for jump tricks or gore, it's best to look elsewhere. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. Making a cup of coffee isn't exactly rocket science, but a new study shows that a background in math and analytical chemistry doesn't hurt, because researchers who applied their skills in materials science and modeling to brewing espresso have made a grounds-breaking discovery. Contrary to popular belief, using fewer beans and a coarser grind will give you a more consistent shot. Their work appears in the journal Matter. If you're a coffee aficionado, you've no doubt noticed that some days you may get a great espresso. Other days, not so much. Even with the same coffee, the same machine, the same settings. To understand that variability, the researchers developed a mathematical model to explore how coffee is extracted or dissolved as water passes through the bed of grounds.
Basically, what we did was to start by writing down some equations which apply to just a single ground.
Jamie Foster, a senior lecturer in mathematics and physics at the University of Portsmouth.
So that's a less intimidating task because, in a real coffee bed, you've got millions and millions of particles that are all packed together in this very complicated way. And so a more tractable problem is to write down the equations on a single ground.
To model the entire coffee bed, Foster and his colleagues copied that equation millions of times, stirred in a bit more math, and then poured on the theoretical water.
The model tells us what we should expect in an ideal situation where all of the coffee is being contacted by all of the water equally.
Christopher Hendon, a computational chemist at the University of Oregon, who also took part in the study.
And indeed, the model describes reality very well for particular grind settings where there's a sufficient amount of large particles so that the water can flow freely through that bed. But when you grind sufficiently fine, that's when we started to see in real life a divergence from the expectation that the model was telling us.
With the fine grind, some shots were stronger than predicted, but some were considerably weaker, which flies in the face of conventional wisdom.
The thinking, if you want a stronger cup of coffee, is, well, I'll grind it finer because by doing that, I'll have smaller particles in my grounds, and those smaller particles will have a higher surface area. And so this high surface area allows more rapid extraction from the grains.
But what the researchers found is,
if you kind of overdo the grinding, what ends up happening is that the particles are so small, in fact, that they kind of clog up the gaps where the water's trying to flow, and that actually hampers the extraction rather than helping it.
And the same is true for the amount of coffee you start with, so that less can counterintuitively end up tasting like more.
Since this article has come out, there has been a tremendous amount of activity on Twitter, arguing, discussing, just general excitement and interest in the project. And, independent of whether this helps make more reproducible coffee or not, this is a tremendous success that we have got millions of people to have read a scientific article and engage with science, but it's a great success for scientific literacy.
And we can all drink to that. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
But Mom!
Don't but Mom me. You heard what the doctor said.
I'm fine. I just got my bell rung. It's not like I blacked out.
You've had headaches, dizzy spells, and you're just not yourself. That's not feeling fine.
Come on, I can't miss the game.
It's still serious, even if you didn't black out. It's better to miss 1 game than the whole season.
All concussions are serious. Know the warning signs and never let your child return to play before a healthcare professional says it's okay. A message from CDC.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Four U.S. prosecutors quit Stone case after bosses step in to overrule them. That was the headline. Here's the story. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Roger Stone, President Trump's longtime friend, was convicted in federal court last November of lying to investigators and witness tampering and obstructing the House Intelligence Committee investigation into Russia's interference with the 2016 presidential election. In February, after prosecutors filed papers recommending a 7 to 9 year prison sentence for Stone, Trump tweeted, "Cannot allow this miscarriage of justice." Then, the higher-ups in the DOJ intervened to withdraw the recommendation and recommend a much more lenient punishment, which caused the 4 career prosecutors to quit the case and 1 to quit the department altogether. Trump, who had claimed no involvement whatsoever, then effusively praised Attorney General William Barr for acting to help out his buddy, Roger Stone. At stake here is something far more important than a sentencing recommendation. The Department of Justice historically operates independently of presidential influence. Now the president and his attorney general are in lockstep, using the power of the Department of Justice for the benefit and protection of the president's friends and political allies. What this episode exposes is a crucial part of the edifice of checks and balances crumbling. That's stone cold scary. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1818. That was the day that abolitionist Frederick Douglass chose to celebrate his birthday. He could not be sure of the exact date of his birth because he was born into slavery. He escaped from slavery and became one of the leading black writers and orators for the cause of abolition. After the Civil War, he continued to speak and write, demanding justice for African Americans and working people. For example, in 1871, he penned an article against increasing demands for cheap labor. He wrote, "Cheap labor is a phrase that has no cheering music for the masses. Those who demand it and seek to acquire it have but little sympathy with common humanity. It is the cry of the few against the many." When we inquire who are the men who are continually vociferating for cheap labor, we find the rich and powerful, the crafty and scheming, those who live by the sweat of other men's faces, and who have no intention of cheapening labor by adding themselves to the laboring forces of society. It is the deceitful cry of the fortunate against the unfortunate. Labor is a noble word and expresses a noble idea. Today, we still face a demand for ever cheaper labor. Business leaders and their political friends fight against efforts to raise the minimum wage. From 2011 to 2015, 8 states scaled back their prevailing wage laws, 19 reduced pensions, and 15 eroded collective bargaining rights. As these attacks on working people grow, it seems that Frederick Douglass's reminder that labor is a noble word is needed now more than ever.
We plant the food, we drive the cab, we load the ship.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all night hawks in the diner of life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Expected to be a tad lower than yesterday, should only be in the upper 40s to low 50s. Sunshine and clouds will mix pretty much throughout the day, a high of around 51, and winds will be light and variable all day and all night. And then tomorrow will be cloudy in the morning, then on and off rain showers during the afternoon. Highs will be around 50 with winds out of the south-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour, bringing with it about a third of an inch of rain just for Saturday, and then another close to quarter inch on Sunday. At least that's the forecast. Pollen is rated at none. The air quality index is good at 26 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate at 3. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.26 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 87%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 52 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 55 and partly cloudy. Rome is 65 degrees and sunny. All the Rome steps at 65 degrees in February. Let's go. Kyiv is 39 degrees and cloudy. Kabul is 31 and fair. Hong Kong is 68 and cloudy. Tokyo is 50 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 68 and clear. San Francisco is 48 degrees and cloudy. And New York is a crisp 30 degrees Fahrenheit. But it's sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Ayman Al-Khalidi of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. More than 800,000 Syrians, mostly women and children, have fled their homes during a Russian-backed Syrian military campaign to clear the opposition in northwest Syria since December 1st, a senior UN spokesman said yesterday, Thursday. The exodus is expected to continue, with thousands of people on the move as whole towns and communities flee to the safety of areas near the Turkish border. Tragically, David Swanson, the UN spokesman, told Reuters, the number of people displaced, the vast majority of them women and children, has now surpassed 800,000. Russian jets and Syrian artillery have pounded towns and villages since early December in a renewed assault, backed by pro-Iranian militias and aimed at clearing the opposition. UN officials say the region is on the brink of a humanitarian catastrophe. Those on the run in Idlib and adjoining Aleppo province are joining close to 400,000 people who fled earlier bouts of fighting to the safety of camps near the Turkish border.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. President Frank-Walter Steinmeier told Germans they must reject racism and antisemitism at a commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the Allied bombing raids on Dresden, which killed 25,000 people near the end of World War II, and I might add, lots and lots and lots of art. In Dresden, a far-right stronghold where resentment over what neo-Nazis call the bombing Holocaust lingers, Steinmeier addressed a somber ceremony that included forming a human chain to remember victims. In a mission to destroy civilian morale, British planes pounded Dresden with explosive and incendiary bombs on the night of February 13th, creating a firestorm that tore through streets and laid waste to the city's Baroque churches and palaces. U.S. planes joined later. The bombing of Dresden reminds Germans of the destruction of democracy, nationalist hubris, contempt for humanity, anti-Semitism, and racial fanaticism, Steinmeier said in his speech. I fear these dangers have not been banished to this day, he said, adding they were starting to poison Germany's public life and democratic institutions. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and for the week. But you do know Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks, especially breaking up of democracy. That'll be reported in real time. So we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appétit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.